What is up guys, this is Locke, YGO, and welcome back to the channel, and today guys, I'm bringing you my Skull Servant deck profile. That's right guys, my pet deck, my old faithful is here, the Skull Servant, and guys, I'm really glad to be able to finally play this deck once again, because fossils are no longer, not as much at least, in the scene, so I don't have to be worried about getting OTK'd with a Skull Gaius. So guys, without any further ado, let's just get into the deck profile itself, and like always, we start with the skill, its bonds, and its still Servants of the Fallen King. This skill is very simple, it basically allows you to, once per turn, send one level 3 or lower zombie normal monster from your deck to the graveyard. That zombie being the Skull Servant, which you want to fill up your graveyard with in order to get your King of the Skull Servants as strong as possible as soon as possible. But that's it for the skill, and now we move on into the main deck. And we start with obviously 3 copies of the King of the Skull Servants. This guy is the main beatstick of the deck. It gains 1000 attack for each Skull Servant or King of the Skull Servants in the graveyard, and if he is destroyed by battle, you can banish one King of the Skull Servants or Skull Servant from your graveyard in order to bring him back from the graveyard. And speaking of Skull Servants, we play triple copies of him. As it's pretty standard in this deck, this guy is a brick, we do not want to open him, we want to mill him with the skill, but if you do open him, we can just set it and pray for your opponent to destroy it by battle. But anyway, moving on, we play triple copies of Goblin Zombie, as this is an easy way to access our King or Skull Servant from your deck to your hand, because when Goblin Zombie is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can search one zombie monster with 1200 or less defense from your deck to your hand. Moving on, we also play one copy of Giant Rat as a floater and a way to bring some monsters from the deck, those monsters being Zombina, which is very important in this deck, because this deck has a lot of recursion, and Zombina together with Giant Rat helps us survive for as long as possible, that way being able to fill up the graveyard and set up for our game plan of summoning King and try to win the game from there on out. And guys, the last target for Giant Rat is the Exploded Dragon. This card is a personal favorite of mine, as it's some free removal of monsters and you don't take any battle damage from attacks involving this card, that way you can just attack into one of your opponent's stronger monsters without getting punished for it. And finally, the last monster we play in the deck is one tribute summon, the Kaiser Glider, which is actually coming up a lot more than I would think, especially because of its very important effect that says that he cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster that has the same attack as this card. That way, if this card is attacked by a Jinzo or crashes into a Jinzo, for example, he will not be destroyed by battle, but their Jinzo will be. Also, if this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target one monster on the field and return that target to the hand, making this a very consistent and very strong card to play in some decks, and guys, this card is being slept on in my opinion, and since we have a lot of ways to bring monsters from the graveyard with special summoning, playing a tribute summon in this deck I think it's a very good choice. But guys, this is all for the monsters, and now move on into the spells. And starting the spells out, we play one copy of Night Beam and double copy of Galaxy Cyclone. So guys, even though this is a very defensive deck, I still want to have some ways to disrupt your opponent's back row, because after this deck is finished setting up, we actually want to play aggressive with him, that way we need some back row removal in order to start doing that. And speaking of removal, we also play monster removal in the form of Hammer Shot, just as a very easy way to deal with your opponent's highest attack monster as long as you're playing on the defensive, because keep in mind guys, this card destroys the highest attack position monster on the field, and this also includes your own monsters if you're not careful. But moving on, we play one copy of Shrink, and guys, I'm gonna tell you why I play Shrink. I don't like playing a lot of traps in this deck, even though in the past Skull Servants was a heavy trap deck. Right now, because Jinzo is free from the ban list, I'm really scared of running into Jinzos and not being able to do anything without traps. That way, I play a little bit more of quick play spells like Shrink in order to still be able to deal with Jinzo and threats like that, instead of just not being able to activate any traps. Moving on, I also play one copy of Supply Squad. This is one limited 2 off card, and I only play one copy because, to be honest guys, I do not have any space in my deck left, so I can only play one of these copies. And guys, this card is very strong, especially during the grind game, if we're setting up our graveyard with monsters, because once per turn, if a monster you control is destroyed, you can just draw one card off this card, so if your opponent keeps destroying your monsters while you're trying to set up your graveyard, you'll just get a lot of advantage off this card alone. But moving on, we also play double copies of Creature Swap, since in this deck we have a lot of weak monsters that we can actually give control to our opponent, for example, like Giant Rat, like Goblin Zombie, and like the Skull Servant. And also guys, keep in mind that the secondary winning condition of this deck is actually giving control of King of the Skull Servants to your opponent, because if it's on their field, he will have 0 attack. That way, you can just take one of their stronger monsters, give them the King of the Skull Servants, and if they're low enough on LP, just win the game with a single blow when they're not expecting it. But anyway, moving on, we also play one copy of Book of Life, just one more way of bringing back zombies from our graveyard while disrupting our own opponent's graveyard, because this also banishes one of their monsters when you bring back one of your zombies. And finally, we do play one copy of Book of Moon as the first limited 3-off in this deck, because like I said, I want to play some spells that are able to remove or deal with Jinzo, and Book of Moon is just a perfect card for that, and it's also a very generically good card in my opinion. And this is all for the spells, and now guys, we move on into the traps. We do play the other two limited 3-off, Wall of Disruptions, which are very strong cards in my opinion and are very good defensively, especially now that all of the good traps are limited 3-offs and your opponent might not be expecting this card at all. We also play one copy of Floodgate Trapple as a limited 1-off in this deck, and this card is just generically very strong. If we could play more of it we would, but we cannot. We also play double copies of Haunted Shrine. Like I said guys, this deck has a lot of recursion from the graveyard and this card helps you do just that. It's basically a monster reborn for zombies as long as you control no other monsters, and if it's in the graveyard you can just banish it while you control no monsters once again and bring back a zombie from the graveyard. But keep in mind guys that during the second time you activate this effect, so the effect to banish it from the graveyard to revive one zombie, that zombie will come with his effects negated, so guys do keep that in mind as that is very important. And finally guys, moving on into the last trap, we do play one copy of Michizur. Guys, Michizur is a very strong card, especially if your opponent's not expecting it, and most of the time, trust me, they aren't. And guys, this card basically says that when a monster is sent from the field to the graveyard, even during the damage step, you can target one monster on field and destroy it. So, as long as one of your monster dies, which guys trust me, on this deck that will happen a lot, but don't worry guys, you will always be able to bring them back, Michizur will be able to trigger and destroy one of their monsters alongside one of yours, so this card helps you survive a little bit longer or helps you get rid of bigger threats your opponent might have. So guys, this is all for the main deck. We play 30 cards if I'm not wrong, and now we move on into the extra and side deck. And in the extra, we play the Arcanine Joker, the Destiny and Dragoon, the Thousand Eyes Restrict, the Cyberblader, the Ojama King, and the Cyber and Dragon. And guys, probably as you guys already guessed it, I do play in the side deck one copy of Waking the Dragon. And speaking of side deck, here it is for you, double copies of Soul Release, one copy of Magic Train. Don't sleep on this card is very strong right now in my opinion. We'd also play double copies of Lost Twin, and finally one copy of the card that I mentioned, the Waking the Dragon. So guys, this is it for the deck profile, and now guys I'm gonna show you the entire deck, extra and side deck laid out for you, in case you guys wanna copy the list for yourselves. So guys, here's this entire main deck for you, and oh, I forgot these. And we play 30 cards in the main deck, 14 monsters, 9 spells, and 6 traps. And here it is, the entire extra and side deck for you guys to copy as well if you do guys want to do that. But keep in mind guys that while this side deck might work for me, it might not work for you guys, since the side deck is heavily depending on your local scene decks that are played. But anyway guys, I hope you guys enjoyed, this is it for the deck profile, and guys, if you did enjoy, feel free to leave a like down in the video, and maybe subscribe to the channel if you enjoy my type of content and want to see more Speed Duel deck profiles in the future. Also guys, speaking of Speed Duel deck profiles, if you have some deck profiles that you would like to see for yourselves, please feel free to comment down below, as I read all of your guys' comments and I'm more than happy to try my best to bring you guys what you ask for as long as I'm able to do so for you guys. Yeah guys, once again, thank you for watching, and like always, this is Locke, YGO, and I'll see you guys on the next video, out!